Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Man, my auntie passed last night. This is a sad life. I'm trying to get my cash.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy B-Dell. Today we're going to be shattering paradigms by talking about the intergalactic gateways in Antarctica and how it's able to take you to highly technological utopian civilizations that's beyond the ice wall. And we're also going to be talking about how it correlates to the 7,000 islands that they found in Japan. And we're also going to be talking about the energy centers in the United States that basically contain stargates and interstellar vortex portals that takes you beyond the ice wall, right? So first, we're going to start out with the fact that the plutocracy facilitated the 1959 Treaty of Antarctica that basically created an amalgamation of many different no-fly zones that's basically a direct emulation of the seal of Lucifer, right? So now when you look at this map of the no-fly zone, right? When you look at the no-fly zone map, it is a direct emulation of the seal of Lucifer, right? So that basically puts an encryption over the geographical atmosphere of Antarctica, which keeps you trapped in an artificial time analysis mechanism that keeps you trapped in a simulation. So that coincides with the theological context, how God of the Bible, Lucifer, separated the intergalactic waters from the third dimension, right? So this is the reason why, because you have an encryption over that geographical landmass in that atmosphere, this is why you're not able to go beyond the ice wall. This is why you're not able to penetrate the fermented dome, right? So it's not by coincidence that you have the St. Louis Arc, because the St. Louis Arc was an interstellar vortex portal to get beyond the ice wall in Antarctica, right? So the St. Louis Arc was a stargate to Antarctica to get beyond the dome, to get beyond the firmament, right? So that's why I told you that when you look at the light code transmission video, I told you verbatim that St. Louis is basically an energy center. It's one of the 7 energy centers in the United States that's in alignment with the Big Dipper star constellation, right? So I'm going to be showing you this video here. There's a video I need you to see because it's talking about, how the scientist, he was working with many different scientists in Antarctica, and they were basically creating many different mechanisms of how to penetrate the firmament. Because when you understand how the archons, who are basically the ruler gods, the draconians, they basically control the 3-dimensional matrix system, right? And the reason they do that is because they gave dominion to the custodians of the planet. But the custodians of the planet, who is the Canaanite beast man, the one who has recessive genetical traits, they cannot lead the firmament because their agenda is predicated upon keeping a certain demographic of people who are acclimated to the land to keep them in a state of confusion in the simulation. So this guy, he was doing studies on the fermented dome, which is basically called sky ice. And I'm going to show you the video.
Us applied, but only me and one other guy got accepted. The application process had a bunch of questionnaires that we had to fill out, and we had to sit for a bunch of one-on-one interviews. It was mostly just a bunch of questions about what our interests and beliefs were. Weird that they would ask about their beliefs. I was sent to McMurdo Research Station in August of 1998. When we weren't busy de-icing the aircraft and working on them, we had time to hang out with the scientists at the research station. The military unit attached to McMurdo was small, and we didn't have our own separate facilities. We didn't have a PX or a media center. There was no chapel or chaplain, and we didn't have our own separate mailroom. We just had to share the same facilities with the scientists.
See, what you're looking at there is like, that's the ice. They're studying the fermented ice because, like I said, they're trying to penetrate the dome because they know that when you have the magnetic frequencies and the shift of it, is being shifted because you have the cymatic frequencies of Nibiru is basically going to cause a pole shift that's going to dematerialize the seal of Lucifer, the fermented dome that's over the planet. So this is why they're trying to penetrate the dome, because they're trying to escape judgment. I'm going to keep going.
researchers, so over time I got to be friends with a few of them. They had two different kinds of ice they worked on and studied. This is where it gets interesting. One kind of ice was the normal kind that we've all seen. They took cores of it out of boreholes in the ground. Just like normal ice, it was mostly clear and sometimes white, and it would melt into liquid water if it got warm. The whole area of Antarctica is covered in this kind of ice. But that wasn't their main kind of ice. The only time I ever saw them actually studying normal ice was when a film crew from National Geographic came by. The rest of the time, which was most of the time, the scientists were studying something they called sky ice.
So that's the ice that basically creates the fermented dome, because this sky ice is basically constructed from the Cassini gaps or the rings of Saturn that contains subatomic particles of liquid nitrogen that keeps you encapsulated inside of a dome, right? So this is why you're not able to penetrate the dome, because it is a highly technological substance that keeps you connected to the simulation of the draconian archons.
This stuff was totally different. We were never allowed to go into the laboratory areas of the station because the labs had to be kept super clean, and they said it would mess up their work if they risked letting too many people in the lab. But one time, one of the researchers that I was friends with showed me a piece of sky ice. You couldn't touch the stuff with your bare hands because it was so cold. And it wasn't clear or white like normal ice. It was solid blue, he said. That's why they call it sky ice, because it was the exact same color as the sky. We had to wear thick, heavy going outside gloves to handle it. The stuff was so cold, it would instantly freeze your skin if you touched it. I don't remember what the temperature he said it was, but it was something like hundreds of degrees below zero, way colder than the normal ice that was outside. He had to carry it in a metal bottle that was kind of like a thermos. He let me play with the piece of it for a while. It felt lighter than a piece of normal ice of the same size, like it wasn't very heavy at all. It almost felt like you could throw it up in the air and it would just float back down. But I didn't try that. And it was also a little flexible when I tried to bend it. It didn't break like normal ice would. And even for a small piece, you could see through it. It was solid blue right from the surface. And here's the really weird part. It didn't melt into water. When it got warm, because we had it inside, it just started to shrink. It got smaller and smaller, but my glove never got wet. And there was no water on the floor. The stuff just turned into thin air when it got warm and vaporized. He said that was the reason why they had to study the stuff right there in Antarctica. You couldn't take the sky ice back to America to study it because it was almost impossible to keep it cold enough.
Like I said, this is why they're trying to do many different experiments, right? They're trying to conduct many different experiments because they know that Antarctica, you know what I'm saying? They trying to keep you out of this, this geographical landmass of Antarctica. And the reason they do that is because, beyond the ice wall, they have many different resources. They have this thing called anthracite coal. Anthracite coal, it basically, for humanity, you can have, 500 years worth of free energy and electricity, right? And you also have the Holy Grail and the Fountain of Youth beyond the ice wall, right? So that's because, their systems of control is based on the fact that they got to keep these resources away from you, right? So when you have the Fountain of Youth, you know what I'm saying, you won't be able to die in the simulation by being encapsulated inside of a fermented dome, right? So this is why the simulation is acclimated to a monetary system. This is why you have a death certificate when you die, which has a QSIP number, which means Community Uniform Security Identification Procedure, right? So that QSIP number is a security, which is a promissory note, a debt obligation that has trade derivatives on Wall Street that keeps you encapsulated inside of the simulation, right? So this is why they don't give you free energy from the anthracite coal that's beyond the ice wall. So this is why they want to keep you going to work to where you got to pay bills to pay for electricity, to where you got to pay bills. You got to clock in per day, per diem, because they got to get paid on Wall Street. So this is how their system works, by keeping you away from these resources that's in Antarctica, because everything that's, that basically dematerializes the matrix system is beyond the ice wall and outside of the firmament. This is why they don't want you to have you there. So this, like I said, this is why you have the sigil of Lucifer, right? This is why you have the sigil of Lucifer, which basically puts an encryption over the planet, right? And also, when you look at, understand many different things about what's beyond the ice wall, right? These are all structures that I'm showing you. This is some of the stuff that's a little bit outside of the ice wall. This is the stuff that Admiral Byrd and many different people, because when you travel 5,000 miles outside the ice wall, this is where you come to, but you don't penetrate the firmament, because when you penetrate the firmament, you get access to many different civilizations that's highly advanced in technology. So these are some of the pictures that were taken in the 1920s by a name named I forgot his name. His name is Cliff or something. But this is outside the firmament, not outside the firmament, but outside, a little bit outside the ice wall, 5,000 miles out. And also, you got, right before you get beyond the dome or whatever, there's an intergalactic door to where you can penetrate the firmament, right? But you need a certain molecular structure. So this is why, you have the plutocracy, the oligarchs, right? The Canaanite bloodline, who are basically the custodians of the planet, right? The cursed seed, the one who control everything in the matrix system in the three-dimensional paradigm. They're answering to archons who are draconians. So this is why they need a form of sacrifice on the planet. This is why you have, train derailments and all this stuff. They need a big sacrifice on the planet because they're trying to escape the firmament, right? But they can't escape the firmament. They've been tricked by the archons to do their bidding, to keep the foot on the neck of the seeds of Enki. So all this stuff that you're looking at right now, this is all beyond the ice wall, right? And with that being said, you also have the Arctic Treaty that's basically going to expire in 2030. Look at these relics and these monolithic structures, you know what I'm saying? All beyond the ice wall. And that's just a little bit of it. Once you get beyond the firmament, you really gonna see a lot of, highly advanced type of things. Now, this is all these was basically captured by Robert Scott. You see, you got pyramids in Antarctica, right? You got many different structures. That's because that, these civilizations were basically galvanized by highly melanated so-called blacks. Because when you understand everything, the inception of the planet, the inception of it, when you understand the 24,000 year equinox, the inception of it, the first 6,000 years was galvanized by a sun cycle. So that tells you that Antarctica was a tropical civilization at one point in time until the planet was put in a state of cryostasis, right? See, look at all these structures. There's a pyramid right there. There's a pyramid. So like I said, this is why they do what they do as far as the matrix system that keeps you connected to the simulation, right? And I'm going to be showing you a video here as we get into the presentation. There's a guy, he actually was a computer programmer, and he found out that the algorithm of the computer programming, the foundation of it was all being controlled by a supercomputer in Antarctica. We're going to get into it, in a little bit. But look at all these structures, all beyond the ice wall, pyramids, right? Not a coincidence. So this guy I'm going to be showing you here. Oh yeah, this is also I want to show you these structures right here. So what you're looking at right here is a cola, a super deep borehole that's basically 40,000 feet deep. So that tells you that you have also have intergalactic beings inside the planet. When you understand the inception point of Yakub and the Shini tribe and the Nakul tribe, you have, these are interstellar vortex portals that goes inside the planet, so where you get inside Hollow Earth. When you're talking about the city of Shambhala and Argartha, right? So it's not a coincidence that you have these structures in that landmass. You got this structure right here in Antarctica that's covered up with ice. Then you have a UFO covered up in ice. All these pyramid structures in Antarctica. So like I said, that's how you know it was a tropical civilization at one point in time during the first sun cycle until the planet was in a state of cryostasis under a sleep spell, right? So you have those structures. Now, when you look at these structures, where is it at? Now, this also coincides with the fact you have 7,000 new islands that just popped up on the coast of Japan, right? That's because, like I said, you have Nibiru is basically terraforming the magnetic field on the planet to the point where you have certain openings in the fermented dome to where certain land masses can go back, back into its inception point. So these land masses that's popping up, they used to be there in Japan at one point in time. So you're going to have new land masses that's coming outside of the firmament and going right back into the planet in the form of unification, because everything as far as nature has a revitalization process, right? Hold on. These are the islands right here that's popping up. And plus, like I said, when you have the planet speeding up in vibration, everything goes back into its original state, and it's all being galvanized by the frequency of the sun and planet Nibiru as Nibiru is terraforming the atmosphere. Then you also, this is an old map that was constructed in 1587, right? So it tells you that there are many different land masses beyond the ice wall, right? Right before you had, you had the pole shift back like 700,000 years ago, right? So now I'm going to show you this video of this guy who was talking about Antarctica. Where is this? We already watched that one. Now this video right here, this guy's talking about, like I said, he was a computer programmer, but he found out, right at the bottom of Antarctica, which was basically installed. It's a supercomputer. As you listen to the whole interview, at first everybody mistaked it as a UFO, as some type of mega structure or something, but it's a supercomputer that controls the simulation of the matrix system for the archons, right?
It's Antarctica in everybody else's imagination. And so I wondered why in our language that's coming out is the government promoting this idea of a flattening of what is a currently rising emotional trend about Antarctica. Mm. Now, did the government know the emotional trend about Antarctica was rising, or were they merely reacting in a pre-planned kind of a way to external events that had nothing to do with language on the internet? Because as far as I know, they didn't even care about the emotional tones of language and so forth in the 90s. I mean, even mainstream media were basically, saying, internet, huh? Email, huh?
Yeah. No, if anyone was studying stuff like that, it would have to be CIA and similar.
Right. And so it brings up a big issue. Well, let me go right to the heart of what occurred, okay?
Sure.
We didn't know it then, and it wasn't until a number of years later that it became evident, or at least became known in a more general fashion. But in 2002, let's say we'll assume it's US military, but we don't know for sure. But satellites over Antarctica discovered something under the ice.
Right.
And it was a huge something. It was gigantic. We still don't know what it is. They still won't discuss it. It causes magnetic disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field so far out that it can be sensed out 300 miles away from the planet. And this unknown thing at that time had occurred in 2002. Now, I was not aware it had occurred in 2002, even though I had hints in the data in 2001 that there was going to be a weirdness, an anomaly, a spaceship or something otherworldly that would be found in Antarctica. But I didn't put any credence to it. I'm not even sure I mentioned it in any of the reports at the time, because at that point it was not as prevalent or as prominent within the linguistic radar, so to speak. And so it was like a passing sort of a thing. And I didn't know how prescient it would be until a number of years later when we find out that there's this large magnetic anomaly under the ice that is not part of the continent itself. In other words, there's something sitting on the Antarctic continent that's underneath the ice that is still able to throw out a magnetic field disturbance 300 miles out.
Would this happen to be in?
So like I said, that is what's controlling the simulation of the matrix system. It controls the algorithm of it. It's a supercomputer, right? Because that makes a lot of sense, because once you understand the fermented dome, the inception of it, if it's constructed in Antarctica, that lets you know that everything is being galvanized by a magnetic field that's acclimated to the computer system, the supercomputer, right? So I'm going to be showing you this video here of this guy. He's talking about how Antarctica, there's a gateway there. You know, nothing's a conspiracy. All the information is out there, but it's up to you to have the mental fortitude to comprehend the information and decipher it.
جعلوا الأرض كروية. احنا راح نتكلم في حدود معينة، هو حدود العلم. إذا قلنا أن الأرض كروية، في الكرة معروفة حدودها ومعروفة قاراتها وخلاص حدودها. لكن عندما نقول أن الأرض عظيمة ممتدة وحدودنا التي علمنا هي هذه القارات، لكن هل هناك غيرنا؟ نعم، هناك أمم غيرنا في هذه الأرض الذي يسمونه القطب الجنوبي. لا يوجد شيء اسمه قطب جنوبي، بل هو جوانب الأرض. ما بعد الجليد البترول، البوابة تطل على أرض أخرى هي حضارات أخرى، منها يأجوج ومأجوج. وللعلم البترول اللي هو النفط الخام، الكرود أويل اللي موجود في أراضينا هو أنهار عندهم، هو بالنسبة لهم أنهار تجري فيدخل في تحت الأرض وفي بعض الأرض حتى يصل إلى أراضينا. ليس البترول هي بقايا حيوانات أو عظام أو ديناصورات من الخرافات اللي الناس انصدقتها، كلها بقايا نباتات قليلة جدا. لا، البترول أنهار في أرضهم تجري حتى تدخل في بعض الأرض إلى أرضنا. واضح؟ لماذا جعل
I'm gonna put some of it back. So you need to understand what some of the stuff he's saying, even though he's talking in a different language. I'm gonna start it right here because this is where you can see some of the caption.
منها يأجوج ومأجوج. وللعلم البترول اللي هو النفط الخام، الكرود أويل اللي موجود في أراضينا هو أنهار عندهم، هو بالنسبة لهم أنهار تجري فيدخل في تحت الأرض وفي بعض الأرض حتى يصل إلى أراضينا. ليس البترول هي بقايا حيوانات أو عظام أو ديناصورات من الخرافات اللي الناس انصدقتها، كلها بقايا نباتات قليلة جدا. لا، البترول أنهار في أرضهم تجري حتى تدخل في بعض الأرض إلى أرضنا. واضح؟
But he basically, once you go, there's videos on the internet somewhere, but he basically tells you that there's a gateway in Antarctica. There's a portal. It's actually like an actual gateway, right? So now you got to ask yourself, you know, why is all this, you know, calamity and everything happening on the planet? What's going on with the planet? Oh, there's something I need to show you. Hold on for a second. Gotta find it. Or, matter of fact, I'm gonna just send it to myself because there's something I gotta show you that basically correlates to these two videos I'm gonna show you, right? So you have, when you're talking about these train derailments, they're in the same locations as you have a lot of trafficking going on, right? Because I told you that this system is being galvanized by the archons who feed off the energy of humans, right? So when you're having these train derailments, because everything in their system that's being controlled by the archons, they gave dominion to the custodians, who is your so-called Illuminati, right? This is why you have, places like, the Epstein Island and stuff like that, and they doing the case. But like I said, this is why you have these train derailments. You get in all these locations is where you have a high increase in the high intensity of trafficking going on, right? Because like I said, this basically correlates to the fact that they need a sacrifice. They need a sacrifice because it's all being controlled for the fact that they are sacrificing the people. They're sacrificing certain people that go beyond the firmament, they go beyond the ice wall. And I'm gonna show you this video here.
Emphasizes about white people selling black people to people from outer space to deal with some debt issues for the United States.
The UFO, see, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, that coincides with the whole archonic energy, the draconian reptilian energy, because like I said, they need to feed off a certain demographic of people because the custodians, who are the Canaanite bloodline, the cursed seed, they cannot leave this planet because they don't have the genetical sequence. So in order for them to leave the fermented dome, they sacrifice your so-called blacks, or sacrifice just humanity in general, so they can they sacrifice them to the draconians, the black draconians, right? So I'm going to show you this video here.
I have been told by a man who worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency for 23 years that the National Science Foundation of the United States has scientists that are meeting and collaborating with extraterrestrials in Antarctica in this deep underground installation, something that one of the military people said to me. The walls had hieroglyphs, but the walls would not join with the ceiling. He said, we can only conclude that we are dealing with technology that is neutralizing gravity. Advanced beings could deliberately have isolated Antarctica under deep ice and snow like a partition from the rest of the world as a terraforming strategy to cohabit on Earth while ensuring that the alien base at the South Pole would be hidden. I have been
So like I said, none of this
I
stuff,
have been told by a man who worked for the Defense.
So with that being said, everything is being put in the public domain, right? So that's how you know that everything, as far as like Antarctica goes, it's not a conspiracy, because they found a whole ecosystem. They found fresh water. So when you have fresh water, that means you have an ecosystem. And with an ecosystem, that works in symbiotic connection with an ecological system, meaning that there's a food chain and you have many different species amalgamating and feeding off another different species, right? So with that being said, once you get into the meat and potatoes and you study everything intuitively, you can see that these things are basically are not, conspiracy theories, right? Because like I said, you have portals all around the planet that can basically take you beyond the fermented dome or go beyond the ice wall. Like I told you, it's not a coincidence that the St. Louis Arc, which is also in alignment with the Big Dipper star constellation, the St. Louis Arc is an interstellar vortex portal, a teleportation device that takes you beyond the Arctic ice wall in the fermented dome, right? St. Louis Arc, Antarctica, right? So with that being said, utilize this information for utility. Get this video out there. Thanks for watching. End of transmission.